Joining me now from Toronto, Doug Ford. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Rosie.
Okay, you wrote this book, I guess in part at least, with your brother Rob. You started it at some point with him. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and why did you both decide that a book needed to be written from your perspective about him and sort of what he was going through?
Well, Rosie, there was a few books that came out and they weren't accurate, so we just wanted to put an accurate book out. And it's really, half the book is about Rob and myself and our family growing up, and the other half is his time as being mayor.
You say that this is accurate. It's also obviously more sympathetic, right? I mean, you're writing from a personal perspective. Do you think that people will recognize your brother in this version of?
Yeah, I think they will, Rosie. But you know, a lot of people would, I think, are going to think, wow, I was even tough on Rob throughout the story. Very transparent about some of the issues Rob faced when he was mayor. So I was, I thought I told a very accurate story.
One of the things that struck me was how little you knew about his problems. I mean, you were his best friend, you helped him through his career, and yet you didn't seem to have any sense of his alcoholism, even though rumors were swirling. How is that possible?
Well, you can talk to, and probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people listening to our show right now can relate. If you have someone in your family that has an addiction, sometimes it's very clear and very upfront. Other times, people have closet addictions that the family's the last to know about. And in that case, in Rob's case, that was what we were facing.
So he was hiding it from everyone?
That, as far as I know, he was. You know, throughout the story, it will tell what happened, and I think you'll have a pretty clear picture after you read the story.
And why was he drinking? Why was he this closet alcoholic? Did you ever have a conversation with him about why he had this dependency?
Well, we did, but I think it built up over a short period of time, and I guess there was a lot of pressure, and I can't really answer that. There's probably 1,000 different reasons why it took place, but you know, at the end of the day, Rob continued to serve the constituents, continued to watch the bottom line at the city. And I always said, Rosie, I would take Rob's judgment with, you know, a shot of scotch underneath his belt than I would 44 people down at City Hall any day, any time, not only at City Hall, but right across the province and the government. Because Rob always had the best interests of his constituents and the people of Toronto at heart. So
how did he get there? You talk about some interesting things in the book about sort of the work ethic that came from your father. So how did that sort of business work ethic translate into politics for both of you, and for him particularly?
Well, you just take the same approach in politics as you would in your own business. When someone calls, you return their call, and most times you'd show up to their door. And politicians just do not do that very often. You know, there is the odd politician that will come to your door, but majority of the time, Rosie, it's their assistant returning the calls, or it would be their assistant showing up to the door, if they even bother showing up to the door. So Rob focused on customer service excellence, and he was the best politician, bar none, over anyone in the country. Rob had his problems, but even our worst enemies will say there's no one that would even come close to Rob when it comes to customer service.
It's that retail politics that we talk about so much.
It is the retail politics. It's, you know, Mrs. Jones, I'll give you one example, Rosie. I remember I was being in Chicago before Rob was mayor. I called him up. He was out in Kingston Road, the far east end of Toronto, and I asked him what he was doing. It was during the garbage strike under David Miller, and he said he's picking up Mrs. Jones' garbage. Mrs. Jones could be part of the Rhinoceros Party, part of the NDP Liberal or Conservative Party. She's voting for Rob Ford, her family's voting for Rob Ford, and her neighbors that Rob picked up their garbage is voting for Rob for the rest of their lives. People don't forget customer service. They put party politics aside, and Rob wasn't too heavily involved with party politics anyways.
In spite of that, and his, you know, I agree, his sort of ability to reach out to regular people and want to help regular people, do you think that he actually did enough good to allow people to forget the crack video, the you know, the racist comments made on video? It's hard to talk about your brother without thinking about that as well.
Well, that's with some people, right? Some people may think of that. Other people have actually met Rob and The tens of thousands of people that Rob helped over his career look at the Rob that they knew. He was always there to help people. When he wasn't well, we were getting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of emails actually coming through, and I was reading them all, and some of the stories were staggering. Showing up on Christmas Eve to help someone at 8 o'clock at night that needed their help. People don't do that. It's unheard of. But that's what made Rob different than the rest of the people.
But even for you, and knowing him and having been through different difficult things in your life, when that came out and he finally admitted that it had happened, even you, that was shocking and unacceptable.
Sure, it was unacceptable and it was shocking, but you have to look at all the good too. Everyone, faces challenges in their life, and you don't have to look any further than the election that just took place south of the border. People are willing to forgive indiscretions of Bill Clinton. They're willing to forgive indiscretions with Rob Ford having a disease, but they aren't willing to forget or forgive when people are corrupt. Rob was one of the most honest politicians I've ever met. Was he honest when he had to admit he had an issue? No, he kept that from a lot of people because he was embarrassed. But everyone knew no one could influence or buy Rob Ford, unlike other politicians in this country, no matter if it's a municipal, provincial, and federal. I've been around politics a long time, and no one could influence Rob Ford. The only person that could influence Rob Ford is the constituent, Mrs. Jones, that needs her garbage picked up. Those are the people that Rob would be listening to all the time and trying to help out.
You alluded to the election south of the border. It's obviously not the same, but do you think that same sort of appeal of someone who is not an establishment politician, who hasn't grown up like that, even though you guys had a lot of political connections, let's be honest, you had a lot of family political connections, do you think that kind of politics can translate into Canada? Do you see similarities there?
Rob was the pioneer of the politics. Before Donald Trump came along, Rob was doing this for 14 years. But you saw that with the Brexit vote over in the UK. You saw it with the election in Iceland, in Poland, over in Philippines. People are tired of these politicians that just talk and talk and talk, have their self-interest at heart, not the constituents, lining their buddies' pockets, not lining the taxpayers' pockets. And it's an academic, there's a real problem out there with politicians doing that. And Rob wasn't that way. He was a straight shooter. People could relate to him as being real. And politicians get up there, you talk to them off camera, they're one way, and they're as phony as a $2 bill when they get in front of the cameras, which people are smarter than what the politicians think they are.
So you are also a politician, though. I mean, you're making those comments, and you've also played that game and may continue to play it.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself? In this book, you also you hit a lot of people. You criticize a variety of people, including the current premier, the current mayor, and others. Surprisingly, you don't go after particular journalists, which kind of surprised me a little bit. You don't go after them. But are you lining up for some political future? And do you think that this book will help that or hurt that, the fact that you've revealed a fair bit about yourself?
Well, Rosie, I don't look at myself as a politician. I'm a businessman that donated his time and his salary back to the community for 4 years. I don't see eye to eye with politicians. I don't care if they're the Conservative Party, the Liberals, NDP. I think there are some good politicians, don't get me wrong. I can't paint a broad brush. But I just can't stand to sit back and watch the city of Toronto on a financial cliff right now, going over the edge, when we left a surplus of $140 million and they're blowing their brains out and everyone's back on the gravy train. The same as the province. We're paying $11 billion a year and servicing our debt, highest hydro rates in North America. And we have a premier that shouldn't be there. And I promise you one thing, she will not be there in another 18 months. And then on the federal side, we're running up $25 billion deficits already. Who's paying for this? We have an amateur as a prime minister right now. We have a part-time drama teacher running the country, which I find is staggering, in my opinion.
But then why don't you do something about it? Why don't you get involved?
Oh, I'm getting involved. Believe me, every day I'm involved in politics. I take constituent calls. I probably get 20 calls a week. I'm probably closer to every 2 days. 20 calls come in. They're federal issues, provincial and municipal issues. I'm there to serve the people and help out rather than sit there and do the backroom deals like the majority of the politicians do nowadays.
Let me end on this. Obviously people have a view of your brother, and it's a
Yes.
view that, people have viewpoints or a perspective of him around the world because he did get worldwide attention. Are you hoping
Yes.
to correct that a little bit with this book, or is that what you're hoping to do to sort of salvage his reputation for him, for his family?
Well, it depends on what side of the fence you're on, Rosie, and people that have never met Rob may think what they read in the media, which is inaccurate. I always say, don't worry about fact checking the politicians. Let's start fact checking the media. Anyone that's ever met Rob, even totally disagreed with him, there isn't one person that's ever come away from that meeting saying he's nothing like the media described him. Rob cared for the people, and the people that knew Rob. Knew the person he was and the job he was doing day in and day out.
Okay, Doug Ford, we'll leave it there. Always nice
Thanks,
to speak
Rosie.
with you. Thank you.
Nice speaking with you. Take care.